Good evening, Mr. Chair. We did have one excused absent request from Darlene Gardner. She's actually traveling out of the country, so that's the only one I received.
We have one member who's requested to ask me to get a motion to excuse. So move in a second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any excuse? Absent grant. You had a chance to consider the agenda for tonight's meeting. Get a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, so you move and second. Aye. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Chairman Monroe, since you don't normally have me, may I ask everyone to just speak a little bit louder so I can make sure I've got the correct address? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right, the next item on the agenda is the minutes from the January meeting. You had a chance to review and consider the the agenda, the minutes from January. Are there any necessary corrections? There being no necessary correction, get a motion to approve the minutes for January.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. New business. We have our first in our new business, a rezoning of Worthington property.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's always a pleasure to see you. So as stated, the first thing we have on the agenda tonight is Worthington property rezoning. So I'm going to run through some site data for you. So this is parcels 25820, 25758, and 80305. This is out on the southern side of Worthington Road. That's east of its intersection with Old Tar Road, just east of that four-way stop sign. So the current zoning is agricultural residential. Current size of that property is 92.067 acres. So the proposed zoning from the applicant is general business and R8 conditional zoning. Did place a rezoning sign on the property on the 4th of this month, and notifications were mailed to adjoining property owners on the 8th. So proposed zoning is general business, which will be the front portion, that 14.914 acres going back to the ditch that separates it from the rear of the property going back to Lori Ellis, and the remaining property, 77.153 acres, is proposed to be R8 conditional zoning, with that condition being 30% of lots shall be R10 size or larger. So just for informational purposes, general business district, the purpose of general business is to accommodate those businesses that would serve the traveling public, require large amounts of land for display and parking, and are not oriented to the pedestrian shopper. And the R8 residential district would be a quiet, medium density neighborhood consisting of single family residences along with limited home occupations and private and public community uses. So here's our property here, subject property here. You got Christ Covenant School, the four-way stop, and the Walgreens here. You see the proposed zoning map. Here's the ditch that separates the two proposed uses. You see there outlined or highlighted in orange is the general business request, and the remaining in green is the R8. So here's our current zoning. So general business here on the corner, industrial, office and industrial for the ACEs for Autism site. This is still zoned R20, but the uses would be the same as the ACEs for Autism site, office and industrial. And then got some R10 and R8 back here with the Bill Clark site, Eli's Ridge, if you guys remember that one. Sorry, this map is terrible, but it's an existing land use. Primarily, it's all agricultural land out here. So this is the property that we're looking at here. Again, the ACEs for Autism site, the Christ Covenant School site, proposed site here. So the general business up here, R8 here, and then the Bill Clark site here. but all mainly uncultivated or agricultural land. So here's our adopted future land use plan. So you can see all this out here is low density residential. So when we talk about low density, we're talking about bigger lots. So again, that's the adopted future land use plan. And as you well know, we are going through a new development of a new land use plan that we do not have completed yet. So I will not be showing you anything about that. Mm-hmm. So our process, so now we can entertain public comments, and once that's done, Planning and Zoning Board will then make a recommendation to the Town Council. Council will then set a public hearing date on the 8th of April, and then Town Council will hold a public meeting at their May 13th meeting. So with that, I'll answer any questions from you guys, and if you don't have any questions at this time, I will entertain a public comment session.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board before we open the public comment? Yes,
Could you just, on the Lori Ellis part of that lot, there was a blocked out area. What is in that area? Right at the bottom of the screen.
Right here?
Yes.
It's a single family home. So if you can, let's see, maybe you can see it a little bit better on the aerial photograph. But there's the home situated here. So the Montessori school would be approximately right here. I think their driveway's kind of in this area right here. So, but they are lined with trees. So from this side, you probably would never see it. But I think it's a white house with a attached garage.
Thank you.
Any other question from board?
So I will inform the board that the applicant is here and actually has a small presentation to give just for their request. So with that, if you'd like to entertain them.
Any objections to the applicant making a presentation? Okay. We'll give the applicant space to present.
Good evening. My name's Wayne Worthington, and this is my wife, Joni Worthington, and my dad, Alva Worthington, is not able to be with us tonight. But we are the owners of the parcels, and we have, in fact, submitted the application for the rezoning. If we can just walk our way through this quick slideshow here, really want to touch on the location, how we got here, the recent infrastructure improvements, roadway access considerations, our consulting engineering firm's recommendations, our goals and visions for the property, and a conclusion. As Brian mentioned earlier, there's 92 acres. The parcel extends from Worthington Road to Laurie Ellis Road and from the Christ Covenant School eastward toward the Bill Clark property. So how did we get here? The increased development along Worthington Road is inevitable as the town's footprint expands. There's plans about to have Worthington Road 4-laned, and recent rezoning actions underscore that certainty. In early 2018, we hired Withers & Ravenel to assess this parcel and recommend to us the best use to complement the area and to benefit Winterville. Withers & Ravenel is a North Carolina-based company which specializes in land planning and has 6 offices spanning from Asheville to Wilmington. Withers & Ravenel was asked to evaluate the parcel based on the recent rezonings, traffic and infrastructure considerations, the Winterville's existing dated land use plan, as well as the anticipated future development of the corridor. The recent improvements around the area have new water mains installed. There's a regional lift station that's now operational, and there's natural gas and electricity is available. As far as the roadway considerations, Worthington Road is slated to be a 4-lane road in the future, and it's described by the town staff as the next Fire Tower Road. The town is working with DOT on a gateway study to mitigate the traffic issues along Worthington Road. In the meantime, Tar Road, which intersects Worthington Road, is currently being redesigned as a 4-lane road. Laurie Ellis Road is also being extended to Highway 11. Since the property fronts Worthington Road and Laurie Ellis Road, entrances will be placed on both roads. However, both of those entrances would be sited as to not to compete with existing developments and businesses. Our consulting firm did have recommendations. They're recommending a mixed-use development to include R8, R10 residential, as well as a commercial component. The firm composed approximately 12 acres, and Brian mentioned 14, fronting Worthington Road to be zoned as general business. The remaining acres would be a blended R8 and R10. These general recommendations were shared with the consultants from Stewart during the recent public input session regarding the development of updated comprehensive land use plan. They noted that the Withers' advice was consistent with their preliminary analysis and the feedback they had received to date. This is a conceptual drawing that Withers put together for us because we realize it's very hard to understand what could go in there when you just have the boundary lines. This shows a very fluid movement. It shows the commercial area at the top being separated from the residential, the R8 and R10s below, and the entrances on Worthington Road as well as on Laurie Ellis Road. We've done everything we can to stay away from Mr. Cohen's house on Laurie Ellis Road, so we're not to impact him. And we would definitely be putting R10 around in that area. Our goals and vision for the property is, this property has been in our family for generations, and if we were to develop it, we want to ensure that it's done in a manner we can be proud of and benefits the greater Winterville community. As reported, the respondents to the Stewart Land Survey use have stressed the need for more varied housing development as well as more detailed and restaurant options. As far as our vision for residential, we envision a neighborhood that maintains a small family atmosphere, small town atmosphere with increased amenities, classic but yet modern homes built with high quality materials. Here's a couple of examples that we've put together to show what we think is a good example of craftsman style homes that would blend into this neighborhood.
Mr. Worthington, what square footage are we looking at?
These homes are about 2,200 square feet. And this is the last residential example. In respect to the commercial area, we envision modern, attractive structures that are inviting. We want to attract businesses and people to Winterville for things that they don't currently have. We want to have them in Winterville to draw and retain their revenue. The types of businesses in the general business category are very wide, and so I've given you a handout here, and what we are targeting is everything that's highlighted. We would not be targeting anything that is not currently highlighted in the handout that you have with you tonight. As far as the structures and what it would actually look like, some potential businesses would have this type structure. Here's a couple more examples of those type businesses. So in conclusion, the necessary supporting infrastructure is in place. Traffic considerations are being currently addressed by DOT in the town of Winterville. The proposed zoning is consistent with other recent requests approved by the town council, and it's also responsive to the land use survey feedback. We believe this rezoning would enable a future development that would complement the surrounding area and benefit Winterville for the long term. Does anybody have any questions that I could answer?
I have a question about the map.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if you can back up to it or not, but the residential portion being rezoned to R8, I'm not clear on that.
What? Okay.
As opposed to the R10.
May I step to the board?
Yes, yes. Can you show me where the R8 would be?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'll see.
Because this driveway was already picked for us by the Bill Park engineers, we had to meet this driveway. So all of these houses down this road, to make a smooth transition from this road, would be R10. Then we would start R8 from there and move over this way until we found another good smooth transition point to put R10 from there forward.
So you're saying that the circular area there is the only R8?
No, ma'am, this map shows approximately 50% R8 and 50% R10 in this concept. So all of these houses in this area would be R8. Everything here, periphery, and down here are shown as R10.
So are you looking at a 50-50 then as opposed to the 70-30 we're talking about?
No, ma'am, this concept drawing was set up 50. However, we wrote in our condition 70-30 based on our engineer's advice on things that could possibly happen. If we ran into any wetlands or any engineering issues that made us change for one reason or the other.
Are there any other questions from the board
Yes, sir.
for Mr. Worthington? Thank you, Mr. Worthington.
Thank you.
At this time, we will have public comments to open the floor for public comments. For those who would like to speak, come to the podium. Limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes.
Will there be a time for us to ask questions as well?
Yes, sir. All right. Are there questions from the? Okay.
My name is Sue Ellen Beal, and I'm the head of school at Greenville Montessori School. And I'd just like to make the comment that I have some serious concerns about the safety of our children and families. There's 120 children in this school in terms of just coming to school, leaving our driveway, and the increased traffic flow and traffic pattern that might happen in front of the school.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you spell your last name?
I'm going to write it for you.
Because it's terrible to spell. It's not terrible, I just want to make sure it's correct.
Ms. Beal, what hours are your school? When do you start and when do you get out?
Our earliest drop-off for school is 7:45 in the morning, and we have an aftercare program that goes until 5:45 in the afternoon. The busiest times being 8 o'clock in the morning. We have the preschool component, and they dismiss at 12, so 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 5:30, 5:45.
So your biggest time is 8, noon, and 3?
All right. There are no other comments. If there were questions from the gallery that in regards to what was presented by Mr. Worthington or by Mr. Jones, again, we'll ask you to come to the podium. And for our records, just identify yourself and direct your
I
question.
am Jeff Kane, K-O-E-N. I own the property down there that you were asking about. I did a little homework to find out what CUD stood for, and it's a Winterville code. I'd like to have that explained in case anybody else doesn't know what that means. And I didn't realize that it was R10, so I didn't study R10, so I have no idea what that is. If you could please cover R10.
All right. Mr. Jones, if you could.
Yes. So CUD is conditional use district. It's basically a conditional zoning requirement that the applicant will place on themselves. So in this case, they're saying it's going to be an R8, which R8 means residential 8,000 minimum square foot lots. So they're proposing an R8 conditional use district where 30% of those lots would meet a 10,000 square foot minimum lot. So you'll have 70%, which would be 8,000 square foot, and 30%, which would be 10,000 square foot.
Minimum, 30% is the minimum.
Minimum. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Are there any other comments from the floor from Mr. Jones, board? All right. So at this time, there being no other comments, we'll close the public section on this matter. What is the pleasure of the board regarding the Worthington?
Discussion?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to commend Mr. and Mrs. Worthington on the commercial district planning in this subdivision. I think that's outstanding and follows what we're trying to develop in Winterville. But I do have some concerns, and I want to address them to the Planning and Zoning Board. If 70% of the subdivision is R8 and 30% of the subdivision is R10, that we have never approved a subdivision in this council in the last 3 years with that high a percentage of R8. The last controversial subdivision that I can recall, for a better term, was the Bill Clark subdivision on Worthington Road. And in that one, we had a smaller percentage of R8 than they're proposing here. The Bill Clark subdivision, as it was approved, had 55% R10 and 45% R8. The general figure here discussed is 70% R8 and 30% R8, excuse me, R10. I'm trying to get myself confused. But it's a larger percentage of smaller lots. And we have no precedent in our past for the last 3 years of approving anything with this higher percentage of R8. Majority of our recommendations to the town council have been for R10 and R12.5. And R12.5 is 12,500 square feet minimum lot size. And R10 is 10,000 minimum square feet lot size. That's been our main approval points. We had a hearing, this town council, on September of 2017, which was the original hearing for the Davis property on Worthington Road, which Bill Clark wanted to present, and that's where they came up with the percentages. This this Planning and Zoning Board at that time rejected the proposal to Bill Clark. Our recommendation was 6-1 to reject it. The town council, within a month or two, did approve it. And that's fine. They're the ultimate law on this, as far as I'm concerned. However, we make recommendations. In that subdivision, again, the R8 is the maximum 45%. I mean, the percentages here are getting skewered. And I feel opposed to it because we're going smaller and smaller lots. We've had 4 or more subdivisions in the last 2 years where it's all been R10 and R12.5. And I think that's where we should stay. If we're going to have R8 in this subdivision, I would ask that we not recommend any more than what was approved for Bill Clark, 45%. So in this case, I'm opposed to this, approving this recommendation for rezoning because there's so much R8. If it was reduced to 45%, similar to what Bill Clark was approved by town council, I would support it. Thank you.
I have to admit, I have had a lot of reservations coming in tonight for the R8, thinking that a possibility of 400 or 380 units could be built here, minus some stormwater and all. But I was calmed a little bit by the map that you presented, because there's only about 177 lots on that map, and it's like that's like half of what that could have been on there. And so that calmed me down a little bit about this proposal. He has, according to this, it's a conceptual plan, it's 50-50 that you have now. And of course, I know I'm in the business, I know that you have to go through all those requirements with the city to make sure that that's gonna work. This is just a sketch. It's nothing that you've gone in depth into designing yet. And so, based on this sketch, that's what his plan is, and he can get that going. 177 lots is not that much for this amount of acreage. And what ended up being the frontage of those lots? Do you know, Mr. Worthington, how much foot frontage that you had on some of those lots?
No, I don't exactly know. We met all the requirements for R10 and all the setback
Okay.
requirements with no issues.
Because the way it's drawn, some of your R10s look about the same size as the R8, so it's really hard to determine that. But I would say if this could be the plan, that this would be a nice development to have off of that Worthington Road, a little bit off of Laurie Ellis. Those are my comments.
Are there any other discussions from any other board members?
Yes, I have a question. I'm still a little concerned about the R8 conditional use at being 70% of the remaining acreage for the housing. If you take the 92 acres and take the 14 plus for general business, you're left with 77 acres. Of that, you're talking about 70% of that being R8 conditional use, which would be 54 point plus acres, which would equate to about 216 lots. So I'm not sure where the where the difference is in the number there.
May I answer that?
So you come to the microphone, Mr. Worthington?
Also, you need to subtract about 6 acres of stormwater. So that would need to factor into your calculations as well. So we had our Withers and Ravenel do a conceptual study, and they believe they can make this work at minimum. You know, the concept drawing showed 50-50, and they think they can make that work based on what we know at this point. However, they, like all engineers, they put a lot of disclaimers out there. They don't know all the details until we're done. But they recommended 30% to give them some margin in their design.
Peggy, he also has about 11 acres of open space on here, which 5 acres was required, Brian, of open space?
You said 5 is required?
Is 5 required
I
on that
wouldn't-
side of the lot?
I wouldn't know until we actually got some plans in as far as lots and everything goes. As far as,
On their map, they just said required 5 acres.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
they've met that, plus they've doubled it.
yeah, so we calculated based on lots and what the recreational open space would be. So we wouldn't know until I got a formal submittal of a preliminary plat.
Right, and we're not here to do that
Right.
tonight, so.
Yeah, there's no like set defined determination of what open space would be, so.
Okay. Anything else from anyone else on the board? Discussion?
Can I come back one more time? If you were proposing a 45% R8 and a 55% R10, I would have no problem, recommending that. But by going with a 70-30, that would be, you just lock us into a lower number of R10. And with no hope of changing it, even though you say your concept will bring it over to maybe 50-50. Well, you're not asking for 50-50, you're asking for 70-30. And I guess I'm gonna go back and I'll make it short. I oppose the great number of R8 lots.
So the matter before the board is whether we would consider or recommendation for rezoning. We don't have a final plat or a plat before us at this particular time, so we're not voting on that matter. So what is before us is if we would recommend to town council to rezone this property from its current state to the matter which is before us. So at this time, there being no other discussion, what is the pleasure of the board?
Chairman Monroe, excuse me, I don't know that the town, have you given us any indication of does it meet all the requirements of that for the town planning?
Meaning more specifically.
As it met what is the town planning's recommendation?
So,
That was in his presentation.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I mean, theoretically, meeting our town ordinances, I think as it's presented, it would. Now, the town's vision, I'm not certain. You guys know the predicament we're in with an old land use plan that's outdated. We're currently trying to develop one. So there's really no one document so the planner in me obviously wants a document that I can point to and say it fits in with this vision. I can't say this plan meets that. I can't say this proposal meets that. In the planning world, you want to see a variety of stuff. You want to see a mixed use. You want to see that variety of housing. This plan may very well give us that, but there's nothing that I can give you guys hard and fast that says, yes, the town staff would support this because it meets this vision and goal. So that in that instance, I don't think I could give you a positive answer on it, Dawn.
Okay. The matter being to the question of rezoning the Worthington property, we'll entertain a motion to approve. Or deny. Pleasure of the board.
I agree with Doug about maybe reducing the percentage of the R8. So I guess I would make a motion to deny the request for R8 conditional use.
Okay, a motion is on the floor to deny the request of the rezoning of the Worthington Road property. We can receive a second.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of denying the request, please vote by raising your right hand. 1, 2, 4. Okay, your hand's up, Mr. Willis. All right, we have 6. All right, so the request to rezone the Worthington property has been denied. Next item on the agenda is for the conditional use development amendment for the Brookstone Phase 1.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Brookstone, this is a subdivision down on Church Street. This was originally developed back in '06. So this is Brookstone subdivision Phase 1. Like I said, on Church Street, that's north of its intersection with Reedy Branch. The current zoning is R15 conditional use. The size is, the request is for the remaining 22 vacant lots in there. Well, I should clarify that. It's actually going to affect the whole property, but the applicant is requesting this because they are interested in purchasing the remaining 22 lots in there. And I'll explain more about that in a second. So we did place a notice on the property on the 6th of March, and then notifications were mailed out to adjoining property owners on the 8th. So proposed request, Town Council authorized the issuance of this original conditional use permit on January 9th, 2006. So in those conditions, as you read there, and I'll read through them just real quick. So a minimum of 75% of the lot shall be 20,000 square feet or greater. So that's just regarding the lot size. A maximum of 25% of the lots shall be 17,500 square feet or greater, again, lot size. The third condition, all homes shall contain a minimum of 2,000 square feet of that's heated space. And then the fourth one is a minimum of 25% of the homes shall have a brick veneer exterior with the exception of gables, dormers, and other architectural features where non-veneer finishes may be preferable. So that's the condition that says 25% of the homes in there have to have all brick exterior. So the proposed request, as it was written on the application, and I quote, D.R. Horton is requesting to amend the CUD zoning condition to remove the requirement that 25% of the homes be full brick homes and change to a condition more consistent with the current market demand and cost considerations. D.R. Horton wishes to change the condition to all homes are required to have at least 25% stone or brick on the front facade. Again, the Town Council authorized the original conditional use permit in January of '06. So here's our subdivision here. So you can see the homes. This is a little bit older aerial. You see that one was built there, but I think there's one here now, but the majority here are still vacant. Here's the original subdivision map. You can see the lot layout there with the road network. These are the remaining 22 lots D.R. Horton is interested in. So this is the entire, so this encompasses phase 2 as well. So phase 2 was obviously never built, but this would adhere to that as well, but since it was all one R15 conditional use district. So obviously we'll go through the process again. This, so now public comments can be entertained by planning and zoning, which you can use in your consideration. Planning and zoning board will then make a recommendation to town council, and the council will hold a public hearing at their April meeting. And with that, I'll answer any questions you guys have.
Brian, thank you. Just to cut to the chase, basically they're asking to change from full brick to brick veneer, or from full stone to stone veneer. Is that correct?
So the way the condition reads, they would have to have every wall, every exterior wall would have to be constructed of brick. And this, so they're asking to remove that condition that only the front facade would have a combination of brick or stone. So you can probably, the applicant, I'll tell you, the applicant's here tonight, and they're willing to show some of their product lines to show you exactly what they're talking about. But it wouldn't be a full brick home. It would just be a home with that brick facade on it. That's right.
Any other questions for Mr. Jones before the developer would like to present to the board?
I'll let you just scroll through. Yep.
Hello, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Zach Anderson from Morrisville, North Carolina, representing D.R. Horton and the seller to amend the zoning conditions of the Brookstone subdivision. Just want to introduce ourselves first of all. D.R. Horton is a national home building company with markets in 26 states. All over the country. We're new to town here. We'll be purchasing our first property at the end of this week over in the Denali subdivision, where we had seen Cavanis and Cates build in the past. And hope to make a long relationship with the board. So I think you'll be seeing us quite a bit here soon. So just to kind of go through our team, Mike Money is here. He would be our local representative as we start construction, and you'll definitely see him if you stop by the Denali subdivision in the next few weeks here. Just a few facts about us, and we can share this presentation with you. But we offer several different product lines in our family of brands that includes a home for everyone, as we like to say. So it's the Express Homes, which is kind of a first-time home. The D.R. Hortons are standard, second home or step-up home. Into the Emerald, the semi-custom higher end, and Freedom Homes, maintenance-free, age-targeted, not necessarily age-restricted, but Master Down Ranch, age-targeted product. So, within Brookstone, we hope to build some of our D.R. Horton brand. That includes homes in this neighborhood has a zoning condition that are at least 2,000 square feet, up to 3,000, 3,200 square feet. Consistent with current demand, what we're seeing most of our buyers ask for, and just in looks and cost, we're requesting to change the zoning requirement of full brick on all sides of the building to match what one of the zoning conditions is in Denali, actually, is that's 25% of the front facade must be brick or stone. As it currently reads, it's only stone on 25% of the house, or 25% of the homes in the neighborhood must be all brick. We're finding that that's a $40,000 plus cost just to add brick to all sides of the house. And it doesn't really appraise. So people would rather take that money and buy a new car to put in their garage than just to have brick all around their house. So just a few more items. We have our own mortgage in-house. We have in-house sales agents, so we'll have somebody sitting in the sales office when we start building, and we offer lots of different discounts for veterans and teachers, firefighters, local heroes, as we like to call it. And we're big on customer service. We have one of the best warranty programs in the country, 10-year structural, and anything else that goes on in the house. We'll be there to help the buyers out, and all along the way we'll be meeting with the sellers as we build the house and make changes, and pretty much everything our buyer wants. So these are some of the product lines that we plan on offering, with the exception of this Cali and Aberdeen, our Pinehurst up through the Hatteras. So we've got actually quite a bit larger product available that'll fit on the large lots that we have out here.
Are you spec build or are you per order?
Traditionally, we do about 50% spec building, so the rest would be pre-sales. All built on site. It's not modular. It's not prefab homes or anything. So,
How many homes? Excuse me. How many homes have been built thus far?
In Denali or in Brookstone? 11 homes already.
What period of time is that?
I couldn't tell you. I think there's one under construction or just completed now, but a lot of them, it's been a while.
13
I think
years.
13 years.
2006 is when it was approved, right, Brian? Yeah. 13 years.
So again, thank you guys for having us. We're excited to be a part of this community, and Pitt County in general. We're hoping to make a heavy hit in town here and provide lots of housing for Pitt County.
Are there any questions from the board for Mr. Money and Associate? All right. Are there anyone in the audience that would like to comment? We'll open this section for public comment and or questions.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board. My name is Ken Wilson. I live in Brookstone subdivision. These are some of our fellow residents from the neighborhood. We are actually the first residents of the neighborhood. I think there were 3 houses built before we had ours custom built in 2008. I've been in Winterville since 1998. We lived right down the street here, down Cooper Street. Beginning in 1998, moved over to Brookstone in 2008. And I'd just like to express some concern with the request being proposed this evening on changing the brick requirement from the 25% to the brick veneer. We as residents in the neighborhood, and we especially, having been there since 2008, have kind of seen a decrease in the willingness of the builders to build up to the level that we were told, and what we, joined the neighborhood under the understanding of what was going to be built. It seems like in a lot of cases they're doing the bare minimum. We do have a brick home. We're the second brick home built in the neighborhood. I like the look of brick. I think it adds value to the neighborhood. But really what I wanted to present this evening is my concern. We're constantly, this isn't the first time we've been here. There was a neighborhood being presented, or rezoning request being presented for neighborhood leading up to Brookstone there on the Church Street extension. But I'm constantly hearing requests when I'm in these meetings to lessen what was promised in the beginning. Can we reduce what we're doing? And I don't really think that's what Winterville would like. And I know we as Brookstone residents would like to see our neighborhood built out the way it was sold to us as, and so I'm requesting that you do not grant the request for reducing what was currently promised when the neighborhood was developed.
How many houses that are currently there are just the
There
two?
are two, I believe. Three?
Three? 3 out of the 11?
There are no questions. It's
I have a question. Are all the other homeowners in agreement with what he said?
Any of you like to share your comments at this time? All right, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Jonathan Ambrose, and I live at 3109 Streamside Lane. And I'm not one of the brick homeowners, but I am one of the newer homeowners. I've been in my home for about 2 years. And the previous developer, until we saw the sign up front, nobody knew that our subdivision was being bought out. So we've had a lot of promises, a lot of disappointments, a lot of them. And part of it is, I hope we can have a good relationship with a new builder. But the condition of the lots being made, the reason why lots aren't getting sold is because it looks like crap. It's not getting mowed, there's trash everywhere where they got construction debris, and that's not what we want. And I just want to express my concern. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
It's very unfortunate that in 2007, 2008 was when the market started going down. So all these developments that started up, and I speak from the other side of it. I worked for someone who had many developments that went south because of the economy going down. So I can understand D.R. Horton's request because it costs too much now, and people don't want to pay. They can't pay. We're cautious about buying too much in case that economy goes down again, and then we can't sell, or people won't be able to move into the neighborhood. So I appreciate, that's why probably your subdivision has not been built out, because everything took a dive. And construction costs have gone up considerably. Development costs have gone up 30% in the last couple of years. So it's a hard road to get this subdivision back up to where it needs to be. Thank you for your comments.
I just have a quick question. My name is Mike Riley. I live in Brookstone, and I was just wondering, I wear 2 hearing aids, so I don't hear very well. Did the gentleman say they were going to reduce the size of the homes, or are you going to stay at 2,000 or above?
Above.
Above?
Yes, sir, we're not reducing these house
That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Any other public comments or questions from the general audience? Are there discussions from the board or questions? Okay, the matter before us is to change the conditional use of Brookstone's current issuance and for phase 1. At this time, what is the pleasure of the board in regards to their request?
Is this going to be are we voting just for phase 1 or for?
I thought it was for the whole rest of the subdivision, Brian, or was it?
Well, the way it was originally approved was R15 conditional use district for that entire subdivision, so that entire parcel of land. So it would affect the next phase as well. Yes.
So it would affect the entire subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So there would be no conditional use period, right?
Well, you would go back to, let's see, hold on. Let me pull it back up.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. I'm good, Brian.
Okay, yeah, so there was 4 conditions, you're taking away 1. So you're not changing lot size, you're not changing square footage of the heated space. I mean, obviously, the road configuration is staying the same. The only thing that the request would address would be that the 25% of homes would be all brick exterior.
But 25% would still be brick or stone front. That's still,
So-
just not the whole.
100% of the homes.
100% of the homes would be brick or stone front?
Brick or stone front.
Okay.
Repeat that, please.
All of the homes that we build would have 25% of the front facade brick or stone.
Or stone, okay.
So you can see their proposal would be D.R. Horton wishes to change the condition to all homes are required to have at least 25% stone or brick on the front facade. So that means the remaining of all homes would have some brick element to it, based on their proposed condition.
Versus the current condition that 25% has to be all brick.
That's right. So right now, as it stands, there's 33 lots in there. 25% would be 9 lots. There's 3 done, so 6 more homes would have to be built brick to meet that requirement.
Are you saying that they've got to be all brick,
Yes, ma'am.
but
As it stands right now, the way the zoning is, 9 of the 33 lots would have to have an entirely brick home sitting on it. So they're proposing to take that requirement off and replace it with a requirement that would have 25% of the front of the house would have a brick element or a stone element to the facade of the house. Does that make sense?
they just want to do away with the whole, all brick,
Yes, ma'am.
The condition
the
that,
condition, and just have it, fronts of it.
Is that all the homes will have brick facade, stone facade?
All the homes.
All homes.
All homes will have a brick facade, okay, thank you.
But I do have a question, but you're saying 25% of the front, so the other 75% of the front is vinyl? Or some other, okay, that's a little kind of,
Can you come to the podium if you want to speak?
yes, my name is William Johnson, and I live over in Brookstone, 3159 Streamside. I guess I was a little confused. I was thinking that 25% of the homes would have a full brick frontal facade. But then when I read this a couple of times, it's, no, all the homes that they said would be at least 25% of the front brick. So that's kind of misleading, and I think it kind of maybe expresses some of the frustration that we've had as homeowners as, you know, things continue to sort of creep, you know, into a direction that we just, and that's kind of, and I'm familiar with D.R. Horton. I lived in the Myrtle Beach area for 6 years, and they're a large, you know, national tract home builder, along with some of the other companies like Lennar. I guess we are, as homeowners, are just concerned that, you know, I was just reading that and wanted to make that point that that's a little misleading to me when I read it, but that's it. Thank you.
yeah, if you can.
I just would like to go back to this,
Back to the
this is the other one.
go back to our full page. I have every collateral there.
There we go. So if we see in here, each of these homes has at least 25% of the front facade with brick or stone. And so as it stands today, you can't put stone. Well, you can put stone, but it's not one of the requirements that you wrap the whole house with. But here instead of saying let's rescind the entire zoning condition, we're offering up that all the homes we build will will have at least 25% stone or brick on the front. In addition to cleaning up the lots that are already there and establishing a functioning HOA that's going to help maintain the pond that's in disrepair and get rid of the beavers that are damming up the stormwater system there. So.
Again, there be any other questions, discussions, or comments? So before the board again, we are asked the request to remove one of the existing conditions of the Brookstone property. What is the pleasure of the board? To entertain a motion?
May I make a comment, please, first? I have empathy for the folks that are out there already. I'm sorry. I have empathy for the folks, the homeowners that are out there already. I really do. And I'm a proponent of all the brick homes. However, I am very pleased that there are 15 conditional use. I would rather see an R15 conditional use with 25% brick or stone than to have a smaller house. So I think you have to give and take sometimes.
Okay, the pleasure of the board, we entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the new conditional use, or how do I need to word it?
Yeah,
Remove the old conditional use and with their new requirement.
Okay, it's been motioned that we approve the request to remove the conditional use of requiring 25% all brick and replacing with the condition of 25% of all homes having brick or stone. We get a second? Okay, it's been moved to second.
Wait, Chairman Monroe, I think we want to make sure the understanding is all homes will have, 25% of each home, all homes will have brick or stone, not the whole front.
As it's written.
That's correct.
Okay.
All homes will have 25, at least, at a minimum,
Right.
25. Right, 100% of the homes of the 32. Yes.
Who seconded that?
Ms. Clyburn?
Ms. Peggy.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. Recommendation stands approved. All right. Next item on the agenda is a report from staff.
All right, so if you guys will remember our last meeting, Vice Chair Killian brought up a subject regarding stormwater pond fencing regulations. So I've put together a little bit of information for you, not an action item, just a discussion tonight. Kind of get your guys' feedback, maybe get thinking about it a little bit more. But I contacted our Public Works Director, Travis Wellborn. I contacted Dr. Bill Hunt.
Oh, my goodness.
I'll let him kind of clear out for a second before we move on.
Yeah, we're going into a longer meeting here, right?
Sorry, folks, I'm a big proponent of being able to hear. Thank you, Angela.
So one of the guys I contacted, other than Travis, was Dr. William Hunt with North Carolina State University. So Bill Hunt is one of the foremost design experts in stormwater BMPs in the state. I've actually took classes under him, been in the field with him. He is a design expert on them. So I just want to clarify that I did reach out to an expert about these things. But before we get going into do's and don'ts or pros and cons, stormwater ponds, we all know what they are. They collect rainwater. So they collect that rainwater that runs over all the impervious surface out there, parking lots, rooftops, all that. They capture that water and it slowly releases it before it goes back into the watershed. So hopefully it's catching that water, letting those pollutants settle to the ground, and it's releasing clean water. So your typical types are your wet ponds, your dry ponds, your bioretention. Sometimes you don't even know what a bioretention is because it looks like a little garden sitting there, but those are designed to have infiltration and then slow release. And then some people always like swale because it's nothing more than a ditch, but it's a fancy name for a ditch. I could not find one municipality or county government in the state of North Carolina that requires fencing around ponds. Montgomery County does have regulations, but those are for those that are voluntarily put in. And those regulations basically refer to maintenance and trash, debris. So they want to make sure that the fences are maintained properly and there's no trash and all that good stuff. But that's all it's centered around. So doesn't mean there aren't any. I just couldn't find any. So there may be some out there. I called around. I searched all our listservs for stormwater pond regulations and couldn't find any. So, like I said, doesn't mean they're not there. I just couldn't find any. So I will say, I started with against just because it's always good who you want the bad news first or the good news first. So most people say the bad news. So Bill Hunt's his first response was a fence would be redundant if we're looking for a safety feature. Basically, the reasoning is that the vegetative shelf, which when you go down a slope into a pond, there's water there, but there's actually about 12 to 18 inches of water. Below that water level is a shelf that goes into the pond. That is there meant for primarily safety. So if anybody gets in it, they can stand up, walk out. But it's also a vegetative shelf for where aquatic plants are going to be stationed around, so they can actually uptake those nutrients. So it's a dual purpose, but one of the major features is for that safety feature. So he sees it as a redundant thing to have a shelf and a fence. I can't disagree with the man who's more of an expert on than I am. Other things, fencing hampers maintenance. So if we ever have to get machines in there, a big type of equipment, that fence is going to hamper it. It collects debris, detracts from open space. So one of the things that I would like to point out, so picture Brookfield off on Altar. There's a stormwater pond, looks really nice with some vegetative stuff around the perimeter. If that had a chain link fence or even a solid fence up front, that'd be the first thing you see when you go in there. So fencing can act as a discouragement from accessing the pond, which is good, but it can also be viewed as a worthy and exciting challenge to children and older youth. In the event of an accident, a fence would hamper a rescue effort. Ponds add to the aesthetics, often attracting migratory birds, and it could be, this is a big one. We don't know the legal ramifications of requiring fences. So let's just say we did require a fence, something happens, is the town liable for damages or personal injury? I don't know the answer to that, but I would say they probably have a good case for us. That's something that our town attorney would probably have to answer for us.
And I'm currently in discussions with him about his opinion on that matter.
So reasons for fencing. All right, so with the bad's out of the way, let's go for the good. So retention and detention ponds do pose a risk of drowning, obviously. Anytime a small kid sees open water, they're prone to go to it. Drowning and other water-related injuries, unfortunately, that has happened around the country and more locally in North Carolina as well. So there are cases out there where somebody's gotten hurt or actually lost their life due to being in a detention pond. So that's obviously the biggest reason for fencing, is that safety feature, keeping people out. Fencing provides an added measure of safety, particularly to keep small children from being able to enter the pond. The best example would be ponds installed at schools, daycares. They usually are enclosed with a fence. So no, this isn't a requirement, but they do it. So if you go to any school that's got a retention pond, there's generally going to be a chain link fence around it. So I know my kids' school has one. Fencing potentially can provide aesthetics if designed properly. So I think if done right, it could add to the aesthetic value of it. And fencing can act as a discouragement from accessing the pond, which could provide that safety and keep people from potentially damaging the function of the facility. So that's another big thing. So you want that pond to be able to perform right. So if you're getting trash in there or people are in there stomping around and causing erosion problems, and you got a big pile of sediment at the outfall, then you're gonna hamper the ability of that stormwater pond to function properly and potentially cause some upstream problems. Any questions or comments, discussion on those reasonings?
Thank you for that research, Brian. Appreciate that.
So, so I did have a couple pictures of what we got in town. So I think this one's over in Brookfield, I'm pretty sure. I think these up.
Brookfield Phase 2.
Okay, so this is the one in the back, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you can see, I mean, they've got a nice starting of some vegetative up top that would kind of do it. Whether a fence would be as nice looking as that or not, but I think once this is mature enough, it'll be a really attractive pond. This one, I know exactly where that one's at. I mean, so that one's Mellon Downs. Not attractive at all. This one, I can see the potential of this one probably being the worst case scenario, just because there's nothing there to detract it. But as far as I know, it meets all our regulations.
It does, and it's not the worst I've ever seen. So, I mean, on the scale of maintenance, it's in pretty good shape, believe it or not.
So, and then, I mean, obviously we said swale, so you can see these kind of like waterways that are just outlets here, and then that's more of a dry pond there.
Is that on L'Oreal, is that right?
Cooper's Point,
Yeah, Cooper's Point.
the newest park.
So here's ours at the town, behind the ball fields over there on Division Street. Obviously the fountain gives it an aesthetic little added feature to it.
The fountain is, the function of the fountain is to aerate it, and that controls the algae growth.
Right.
Yes. As you may recall, when those ponds that pond was originally built, it was built with a plethora of stormwater type plants that were to be installed, and they were. Well, boy, did they grow. So then they became too numerous, we had to clean it out. So now we've got this constant overgrowth of these plants that's left, plus the algae. So the fountains, when they're not clogged up, make a nice way to aerate the ponds.
Ms. Parker, just a question of concern, how deep is the water in there? Do you have any idea?
I believe it may be about waist deep for most of our Parks and Rec folks that have been in there. I will double check that, but I think that's about accurate.
And Brian, you said, I believe you said earlier that most water retention ponds are designed for 18 inches of water.
Well, that shelf would be. So so most of them aren't going to be more than about 2 feet deep anyway in the center. There could be some potential outliers out there, but for the most part, what I was talking about was that shelf. So when you're actually going down that 4-to-1 or 3-to-1 slope and you hit the water, you're probably not going to be over 18 inches of water well out into and the shelves usually range from about 10 to 12 feet out. So, I mean, so you got a good cushion there that's going to provide somebody, if they happen to roll into it, it's not like they're going to roll off and then all of a sudden they fall neck deep into water. So they'll have that shelf is what you keep referring to. They'll have that shelf there to provide them with the ability to stand up. So.
Regarding this?
Yes.
Yes.
The reason I brought this up 2 months ago is my concern for liability for the town. I'm not a lawyer, and Ms. Parker says the town is addressing that, which is all that I asked for. And also, in discussion with Brian, he said there's no requirement by the town for any plant matter to be installed around the outside. Could you go back to the first subdivision, Brookfield, is that?
Mm-hmm.
That was volunteer, they did that voluntarily. The first three pictures from the left, from the first two from the left is the retention pond just as you enter off of Old Tar Road. There's right there at the beginning, and it's got a lot of growth in it. Well, if I lived next to that, my concern would be mosquitoes and what it looks like. But the town has no control on that. That's the homeowners association.
So you're talking about the actual interior plants?
Well, that was just just a comment. But they were nice, in my opinion, to install those boxwood or whatever or holly or whatever they are. And as they grow, you can see the pictures on the right. That's the newest pond. And the one on the left are grown a couple years older, and it's going to look nicer. And I think that was my point. It's not required, but I don't know quite how to say this, but I hope that maybe we as a board might consider recommending it to the town council that this might be a good thing to put into the subdivision ordinance, planning for some decorative planning around any retention pond to change it from looking like a needs attention. By the way, did anyone else catch the comment about the subdivision which we were having the large discussion about, that the retention pond there had gone to pot and nobody's been taking care of it? I heard that when they mentioned
I did.
I believe the new subdivision owner is going to address that.
It didn't sound like they had a homeowners association.
That's right.
And that's why.
And they are required now, so.
Well, and not to get too far off subject, but I have talked to people. There is an HOA established there. It's just not active. So, I mean, you only got, so, I mean, you've got a limited number of people in there that aren't being active in the HOA. So, I mean, it's because the majority of the lots are owned by a developer that's not building homes in there. So, if they don't have really a whole lot of vested interest in keeping the homes they've got in there, then I can understand why.
I guess what I'm trying to say is if there's any interest on this board to recommend to the town council that they consider putting plants around a retention pond, I'd like to have us do that. And if there's not enough interest, let's let it die. I'm not don't want to make a big deal out of it. But I think the idea of having the town council redo the zoning ordinance to require some decorative plants such as they've done here would be nice. No, it's not.
So,
you told me it wasn't.
So wetland plants are required. So the aesthetic value up top, I'd have to get back to you because I don't want to tell you something that's wrong. But I don't think that if we're just talking about the top of the bank and out, I don't think we do require them. But part of the vegetation plan. Yeah, because the only vegetation plans we really have are for commercial properties, and don't let me lie to you because let me do some research on it. And if you allow me, before you guys take any formal recommendation action, I'd like to see what Keene has to say as far as the fencing goes for liability issues, and then see what other jurisdictions are doing for plantings. That gives us a good baseline. Just for us to arbitrarily to say, let's do this, I think to research what other people are doing and what they're expecting out of the development community just gives us a really good start. And that's something I haven't looked at yet, but I'd be happy to do that for you guys.
Well, I agree there for you to check it out, but I agree with Doug because that's what I was thinking, seeing these just open like they were. To have something, we can't have fences, evidently, there's not, but shrubbery or some kind of, decorative something around it, I think would look good.
Well, it looks like to me it needs some kind of maintenance or upkeep because it looks
So,
like a bunch of weeds growing around the perimeter of the.
So I will speak about this. So if I may, Terry, we're about to have a stormwater workshop with council, and I know Travis with Public Works is working on kind of ramping up the inspections of these. So when when an HOA takes over a stormwater pond, they're responsible for annual maintenance and annual inspections. So that means they're supposed to be making sure that their plants are healthy and they're doing what they're doing. So that if the plants are healthy, they're attracting the right kinds of insects. So you're talking about mosquitoes. So there are actually aquatic plants out there that attract the right not only insects, but the mosquito fish or gambusia. So you got the right variety of that ecosystem that doesn't allow for nuisance type insects in there. But that's part of what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be making sure they're functioning. One, the stormwater's functioning properly, but two, the aquatic plants are functioning right, and they're in there and they're not dying off. But again, that's something I'd be happy to research for you guys and make sure before any type of recommendations made to council that we've got our ducks in a row. So.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, if I could just follow up on that. I said this morning in staff meeting that stormwater appears to be the next sewer problem for the state of North Carolina, and we're already seeing some of the, I'll call them regulations, unfunded mandates, however you'd like to put it, continue to come down. Very recently, very intense and very costly for what things related to stormwater in cities and towns will have to be done. And part of this inspection process is going to be what we're held to in our permitting, but you all see where this is going. We inspect the rules and regs that have to be in place. These ponds have to be kept up to a certain standpoint, you know, moving forward. That's going to cost. So it's again, I'll be interested to see how we're going to be able to address all of that from a holistic perspective moving forward, because it's going to be massive. So we're going to do our best to stay on top of it.
Well, getting back to the fencing, you know, I can understand if equipment has to get in there and all that stuff, the fence would have to be taken down, all that. But if shrubbery was put around there, that could just be dug up, you know, in a section. Maybe a piece of equipment had to get in there, a little, and you could just possibly take up that little section of shrubbery.
If we could consider, as you're thinking about how you may want to address that, shrubbery, for example, then we'll have weeds in between the shrubs, and then who's going to weed that? Whether you look for trees, some type of tall shrub trees, I'm not sure, but just keep that in mind, because you can put the greenery in there, but then if that's not maintained, it can look even worse. So that's been what I've seen in other jurisdictions that attempted, not because the town made them do it, but they tried to go in and add some feature, crepe myrtles, whatnot, and then it's never taken care of. So sometimes that looks worse than the bare pond. So that's just a food for thought kind of thing.
Well, you said that, I didn't realize the homeowners association is responsible for those ponds.
Yes, ma'am, we don't want them. We don't want them.
It's a costly, it's very costly to maintain those. So typically, inspections will, I mean, you're talking about maintaining on a regular maintenance schedule. You're talking about having an engineer come in and certify that it's functioning properly. So, I mean, just those two alone can be very costly over time. So, and you compound that by the amount of stormwater ponds we have in the town, and you got to do that for every one. It adds up really, really quick, and that's a burden the town does not need. So.
I understand that.
Brian, I would be very happy if you would research it and come back to us next month.
Absolutely.
The only thing is I want us to stay on top of it, because we're having some growth coming into our town. I'd like to see us.
Absolutely.
If there's going to be a change to the institute before it gets too far down the road, that's all I'm asking.
Especially with the two new subdivisions and the wetlands and the ponds.
Absolutely.
That conclude your report?
That's the only thing I have left is just our, let's see, sorry, clicked off of it. So I did have just our little informational slide. As always, keep up to date with our land use plan online. So we do have that page dedicated to our land use plan. We had a really good public design charrette and visioning session I think all in total with staff and people that came through here for that event, it was about 100 people between the 3 days. So we had a really good turnout, got some really good information. So the land use plan is coming along swimmingly. And we hope to have a hard draft within the next couple of months to really show you guys what it's going to look like. And by the end of summer, we should have something to formally pass on to council for hopeful adoption. So looking forward to that being done. One of our big upcoming projects, we're about to, we just got STV on board. They're an engineer, they're out of Raleigh, the one we're working, I'm sorry, out of Charlotte. But they're going to be doing the corridor study for Worthington Road. So hopefully by the time, this is going to be a short little corridor study, have them come in, do some traffic analysis with growth analysis, let us know what we need to do, be preparing for as a town for that corridor, what it's going to look like, what our right-of-way should be, where we should have things located off that right-of-way, whether that turns into some type of form-based code, I don't know. They may have a recommendation for that. But anyway, just in the infant stages on that one. So I'll be able to report back to you in the coming months on where we're at on that as well. So that's all I got.
All right. Are there any other comments from the board?
There are. One other thing we brought up, remember 2 months ago, I brought up the idea of the car lot on the corner of Main and Mill, and how that we have a nice sidewalk down West Railroad Street that turns the corner and stops on both ends.
Mm-hmm.
And for someone to walk from Railroad Street, which is supposedly our main drag,
Sure.
over to the Dollar General, they have to go out into the street.
Sure.
Or cross the street to no sidewalk to no sidewalk. And Brian, I thought perhaps you were going to check what's going on. Those cars are right up to the curb.
So I did some research on that property. They have not expanded their footprint for the car dealership since before 2003. So since that time, it's been the exact same. So I went chronological back in Google Earth and looked at that. So basically, from a planning perspective, a zoning aspect, it's a non-conforming use at this point. So they are doing exactly what they've been doing for so long. We won't be able to really change it unless they change it. So once they change it, then we'll have all the authority in the world to go in there and tell them to change their design or the layout, however, whatever, whatnots. But at this point, it's been there for as long as I can go back to aerial photographs like that.
Brian, I don't mean to be argumentative, but if you're saying to me that if the town council asked for a sidewalk to go down Main Street to Mill Street on the north side, they couldn't do it? Is that what you're saying? Because it was a non-conforming use?
Don't put me in a corner like that.
Brian,
I think it would be some negotiation with the landowner to see exactly what can and can't be done. I think we would start by contacting the property owner, seeing, and then going from there.
The reason I bring it up, and we're part of planning and zoning in this town, and all we're making is recommendations. I understand that. But we're seeing some growth downtown.
Absolutely.
And I want to see it done right and make our pedestrians safe. And that's all I brought this up for, because
I agree 100%.
We got some good things happening.
I agree 100%. And sometimes things like this will snag you up, but I think that's where I kind of go back to my previous comment. You contact the owner, you start there, but to go in and we wouldn't have any legal course to give him a violation at this point. So vested, grandfather, whatever, however you want to put it. Yep.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, does the town have a right-of-way?
So it's a DOT right away.
In our properties, we do, town does.
Sure. So that's a DOT right away. I've seen a couple different maps that show a couple different right of ways in there. I'm not exactly sure if DOT knows what their right of way is in there. To be perfectly honest, and it's funny, it is, but I think if you look at 3 different maps, you're probably going to see 3 different right of way widths in there, just because it's been there for so long, and it's changed a couple times. There used to be some diagonal parking on that street. since the 50s, that little streetscape has changed up a lot, and it's always been DOT, so,
It's been that way for 60 years.
yep.
And I'm 75, so I know now.
But until DOT has a problem with it, I mean, we could inform them and see what their take is on it, which is probably an avenue we could take, see if they got any issues with it.
If that were, possible, then whatever, then the police could enforce that to get them to back those cars off of back them up some.
There's really nowhere for them to go. So there, if you'll notice how they're parked,
I do, yes.
you'd be hard pressed to back them up enough currently. They'd have to, at least, I think they'd have to do something different
They'd have to
than
lose some
what they're
cars.
doing.
Yeah.
Mm. In other words, there's just not enough property there.
It's not
for them to
much
do.
property for what they're currently doing.
That piece of property's got a lot of potential too, so I think with the right tenant, right landowner, that could change up more for the good of downtown. So it's not something that we're not looking at for sure, so.
Well, who owns that property now? Carolyn used to own it.
Robert Overton, I think is his name.
The guy that saved the car.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought he bought the property.
Yeah. Yeah, he's not very interested in participating. We tried to get him to go on our downtown tour, just for whatever reason, he's happy doing exactly what he's doing, so. Can't blame him.
There being no other matters before this board, we will entertain a motion to adjourn. It's been moved and second. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Meeting stands adjourned.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. That's right. Sound like what she said. I was like, when she wrote it down, it was all 4 letters. I thought, that did not. It sounded like it had many more syllables. Thank you, Mr. Monroe, than what she said, but anyway.
See you, Councilwoman Robertson.
Is non-voting yes voting?
Yes. What could he not vote? Sorry. Oh, he didn't raise his hand.
You just kept saying 6. Like it still wasn't over. She said like.
I guess it's. It's not votes, yes votes. Yes, yes.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Thank you.
No.
That was,
And I generally would, and I consciously did not do that just because there was nothing I could recommend. And
good to see
and
you,
to
lady.
actively recommend denial, I don't think it warranted that, but to actively
It was good.
recommend
Y'all did a
approval,
good job.
definitely. And I told him as much. I told him I'm not going to get up
Did a
there
good job.
and recommend to you guys to approve it. And if the question comes up, I will give the answer that I gave. So you're exactly right. And I knew somebody was going to catch it. I was waiting for it. So it's not like you caught me off guard, but I'm glad you did because it gave me the opportunity to say what I said. But I didn't want to. I don't know.
Sure
We talked
did, and I
about
think we
Terry
actually,
County action that we want to
yeah, and I thought we
But
inserted,
I like the
I thought
plan.
we actually
I like
put it
the
in
way
one
it
of our
looks.
newsletters. I
told
made me
him
go
that.
back and look.
I don't remember because I used to read them.
He won't miss.
But yes,
Asked him to do a little bit different from what he was doing. He wanted to go his own way. I was like, that's fine. I was like, I can't stop you for
These are the council approved them, just like we do the clerk.
absolutely.
That's the
They
problem.
very well could.
So, because we still don't have a good
And I
answer
think
from
he's-
that to these. Yeah.
But if it was
But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not over with yet.
You're probably right.
I mean, it does.
We'll make sure we get it in there.
This so he flashed this to
Fine, I'm
me
sure,
last week.
we can
And
conjure
I
it
tried to
up.
keep it, that time they
Well,
wouldn't let me, but I mean,
maybe.
even, it's a planner's dream for a walkability, like you're up
Let me
close
tell
to
you,
your
I just
road.
got one cut.
Yeah, all
It
your
was terrible.
parking's in the
His
back,
daughter,
and you meander
she
back
was
through,
spring
I
break
mean,
this week,
just,
but she worked all, so
but you know, it's got
last
it all
week,
green
she
and
worked
pretty, so I mean,
basically the whole
great.
time, so I took Thursday off.
But I
I
love,
spent
I
the day
love
with
the
her
design.
Washington, and I said,
These lots almost
it was terrible.
And they very well could be.
It's so woolly.
Well,
Man, that was, so I tried to get Wayne to,
And I just went to
I don't know if in his mind, like,
She starts,
Yes.
saying 30% R10 or larger, but he thinks
Gosh,
it's,
I had no idea how much they, so I'm glad I have it, but you gotta get it off of here.
you know what I mean? But I was like, they need, you're gonna have to go a lot more guaranteed than what you're giving right now. Like this, that doesn't even sound warm and fuzzy, but you need to give the board something
That's right. There was
tangible.
none left for you.
If you're gonna put a condition on it, put a
Thank you,
condition on it.
folks. Y'all have a
Like if
good
not,
one.
just go,
I
hey, all right.
understand. Oh, my goodness. Good to see you. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Of course.
I feel short.
Well, I'm glad you made it back.
I am too. It's been a long day. There's a rule about, and I'd have to look for it, about the number of times,
He can't come back within a year.
right.
If he gets, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, it seems like if they miss 3 meetings.
Oh, the unexcused absences?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, if it's unexcused 3, then we would dismiss him from the board.
Yeah, I was thinking, I know that.
Yeah, I don't know where Mr. Fleming was. I didn't hear anything out of him.
And,
He was
seems like the two of them miss a lot. I mean,
Who's the
the lady down here, I don't even know her name.
Darlene Gardner? She's actually been pretty steady. And she, every time she's missed, she's asked me because she told me she was traveling. So she's she's responsible enough to tell me she's not gonna be here.
Oh, well, that's the important thing, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as long as you excuse them, right?
Mhm.
They're unexcused absences.
Those are unexcused.
But excused.
I think there's a limit on excused too.
There's a limit on both of them.
Is it? Okay.
Anyway, I'm out.
Keep me straight, because,
I-
I'm not with you all the time.
We try our best, Terry.
It's a job, I know. Brian will tell
See, Ms.
you.
Pegg,
Brian will tell you, I know.
I don't. So what do you think?
Would you do me a favor?
Yes, ma'am.
Obviously not tonight. Can we get, Mr. Worthington's presentation, if you don't already have it?
Drive
Oh,
right
man,
now.
oh, the man!
I'm surprised he tried to take it from me.
I figured he wouldn't share it. Was he upset? Could you tell?
I didn't even look at him. I was gonna talk to him, tell him we'll talk later, but I didn't really have a chance to.
Man,
I don't think the Brookstone people were very happy, but.
Mike Money looked like he could have ripped somebody's face off. Of course, that name just is
That
hilarious.
is so good to me.
It
Gosh, I
is,
wish
but
my
he
dad
looked
was
like,
like
when
mine.
his people were talking, he looked like he was gonna rip somebody's face off. I was like, oh my God.
Well, it's ridiculous. Like, y'all been sitting in a dilapidated subdivision for over a decade, and now you got a quality builder that wants to come in.
Now you want to talk about how highfalutin you want it to be.
I tell you though, did you see his little sketch?
I did.
It does, I mean, I thought Don was about to give him a pass.
I am, and you tell me you're the planner, I'm not. I'm just a lowly
Oh, yeah,
government employee.
believe it.
I think all that leaning on how many R8 lots is good. I think they teeter on being illegal. They can't tie him to the percentage, can they? To the percentage of R8 versus R10?
Well, I mean, if he's the one that stated it, they can
Right.
prove it, but if they, yeah,
I mean, they can't tie him to that, can they?
I mean, it's part of the condition of the zoning district, then that becomes a nightmare for us though. Like, so if I don't have something that's defined that
No,
this
I
is,
agree.
I guess, is that what we're asking?
I think so. Okay, so remind me, his condition was that 30% of the lots would be R10?
R10 size, so basically he's saying he's gonna have 10,000 square foot lots over 30% of the subdivision. So now I gotta make sure.
Okay. That's where the 70-30 was coming
Yeah.
from. Okay, I got you now.
So now as a reviewer, or as our office would be charged with making sure he's meeting that requirement, like, I guess it'd be easy enough to do, but
Well, it's no different really than
now it's just us talking. It's no, that requirement's no different than 25% of the houses are all brick.
Oh, yeah.
So I ain't gotta keep up with that. Who's doing that?
Well, right now it's pretty easy because there's only
Right.
6 houses built, 3 of them are.
But how about square footage? I mean, I guess that would be an inspector's job at that point.
Yeah,
Is it?
But so there is a spot on the zoning application that they spell out how much heated square foot is gonna be. So we'll write the permit for a house that has this amount of square footage in it.
Yeah, but if it's, you
So-
know, 30% of the lots are gonna be,
Oh, yeah, it's a nightmare. So we got a couple of spreadsheets. There's one with, was it Laurie Meadows? It has to be a certain, but we're keeping up with the spreadsheets. So,
well, I mean, that's really but all you can do.
yeah, I mean, unless there's a software program that
Now,
keeps up
David
with it.
was telling me about this OneNote. I've never used it in Office 365. I don't know, have you used it? He also talked about SharePoint, which I've not used. I guess we have access to both. But particularly if you're taking notes like in your DRC meetings, it's real time. So everybody's sitting there, or when they get back to wherever they are,
Mm-hmm.
those notes are there. Now, that would you'd have to have somebody there.
So is it
Transfer.
recording people or is it?
No, it's just basically, it's like if I'm typing it in, it's just everybody's seeing that and got access to it.
Oh, okay, I got you. But everybody has to be on one point, or share.
Everybody in our organization
Staff.
has it. That's got a VOA seat, which should be everybody in the DRC meeting, I think.
Should be.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking we use it for staff meeting or anything else, actually. Somebody's gotta be, you know, doing it. I don't know how y'all transcribe your DRC stuff, but
Pen and paper.
but it's a thought. You did a good job.
Thank you. I'm glad you were here.
I didn't do anything, except you did this pitiful
What's
log
that?
note job. Who's whistling? Oh, it's the wind. I was like,
I was about to go into combat mode.
I was getting ready to get behind you because I fell down the steps on
It
Saturday.
sounded like some I don't know, saw or something.
You heard that story.
What?
I took a dive down my staircase.
No, I heard you talk about it this
Yeah.
morning. What happened?
Oh, yeah. I was coming down with full load of laundry, and of course, I don't live in a big fat mansion like you do, so my steps.
We don't have steps, so.
You don't have any?
Well, we do have a bonus room, but.
Well, that's Sarah Catherine's room. That's the only reason I was up there. But the steps are short, front to back.
Yeah, ours are too, extremely.
So I don't have big feet, but they're not as big as yours. But if you're not careful and not paying attention, you can step off the front of that step. That's what I did.
Yeah, well, especially in my house, there's a gallery place where all Harris is junk.
Well,
So then you're stepping over on a short step.